Hey guys, welcome back to Pwtb. I'm obviously your host, Jake, back with my co-host Evan, and we got Timmy joining us today. How you guys doing?
I'm doing great. Pleasure to be here as always. Timmy, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty darn good. It's been a good week.
Oh yeah, it's been a great week, especially since the Marlins walked off the Yankees yesterday, and what a game that was. Evan, your thoughts on it, man?
Yeah, yesterday altogether, you had the Colorado game where they were down 9-0 before they even took any bats and came back. But I will answer your question directly about the Marlins. Yeah, you want to talk about, the Marlins, especially the last month or so, they were one of the worst teams in the league. And now just to see them fighting, they're almost 500. I don't know if they'll make the playoffs or not. I know Jake's really hoping on that. Well, how far back in the wild card are they? I know you've been keeping track.
We are 7 games back.
Okay, 7 games back in the wild card. You never know. It's always fun to look. Probably not likely, but they're one of the hottest teams in baseball, and you know, you can't overlook that. But yeah, what an exciting game yesterday. Down 9-4. What's a Stowers hits a grand slam in the seventh inning, cuts it to one. The Yankees take another 12-10 lead going into the bottom of the ninth. Marlins rally. And I think the official score on that last at bat, what was it like? It was like fielder's choice to the catcher, not even the pitcher.
It was
Like
an
they,
RBI.
Yeah.
It was an RBI single.
yeah, it was an RBI single, but they ruled it as a fielder's choice to the
He,
catcher. You do not see that a lot. That ball was hit like 3 feet, but you know what? Good enough to win. And
yeah.
sometimes winning is all that matters. Yeah.
Yeah, good enough to win. Last night was just another example of these Marlins. They just don't quit. Higher style. The Marlins down 6-0. Javier Sanoa hits a big 2-1 blast in the bottom of the fifth, I believe it was. Cut the lead 6-2, and then Marlins just never stop. Never stop fighting. Liam Hicks. Yankees take a 9-4 lead after that. After Hicks makes it 6-4, Yankees taking 9-4 lead off of Trent Grisham 3-1 homer. And then, Kyle Stowers, Javier Sanoa, 9-9, heading into the eighth, take 10-9 lead. Oh, I'm sorry, the Marlins are up 10-9, heading into the eighth. Yankees tie it up, and then in the top of the ninth, Yankees take a 12-10 lead, and then the Marlins score three in the bottom of the ninth to win it. And like everyone was talking about, like that dribbler back to the mound off of the bat of Augustine Ramirez, there's not much the catcher can do on that. He misplayed it, so there's not much he can do on that.
Yeah, and just one more point. I think you got to give big credit to the new Marlins manager. You got to give credit to the young players on that team too. Kyle Stowers is having an amazing year. They even were trading some guys, like Fortes, their catcher. They traded who's the big bat that you guys traded to?
Jesus Sanchez.
Jesus Sanchez. So a little bit unexpected. Maybe the GM side of it is still not catching up, but I think you got to give credit. The Marlins got rid of Skip Shoemaker recently as manager. You bring in a new guy. We're sort of going through the same thing on the White Sox side of things. But the Marlins, they started out, like I said, they started off the season pretty slow, but good managing can do that. They can right the ship and be like, wait, we got enough talent. We can win some ball games once it gets to summer. So absolutely got to give credit to that. But yeah, what an amazing game. What an amazing Friday slate though,
Oh
all
yeah,
around.
what an amazing game. What an amazing Friday slate. But let's talk about the MLB trade deadline. So let's switch gears and talk about the MLB trade deadline for a minute. You know, Starting with the Marlins, I think that, this front office is different than, past front offices and past general managers, as you can tell. We're not fast to play off, our contending guys and, going into a full rebuild. Peter Bendix and company they were waiting. They were waiting to see, what kind of offer they got on, guys like Shane Alcantara, Edward Cabrera, Anthony Bengo, Liam Hicks, um, all those guys, and they just stayed put. They didn't get what they wanted, so they just stayed put in Miami. And past ownerships, I don't believe you would have seen that. I believe past ownerships, the Marlins would have made a deal just to make a deal.
Yeah, this was an MLB trade deadline, and I want to go over my big highlights. That some teams went way too far off into their own ends. I think the Padres made a terrible mistake. I'm not saying Mason Miller is a bad pitcher, but I think the Padres gave up way too much. They gave up a number three overall prospect and like three other pitchers, I think, too, like to the A's for Mason Miller, and I think they got JP
Yeah,
Sears in
well,
that deal as well.
Padres don't care about prospects. They care
They do
about
not.
winning. No, they don't care about prospects.
And that's not a terrible strategy, but when you're thinking about, okay, so if you have to go out and sign a big free agent, like they go out and get Juan Soto or they go out and get Manny Machado like they've done before, I understand that, but this is just a closer, and yes, a closer is a big deal, but I don't think he's as big to give up. Like, what's the 18-year-old kid, the number three over prospect? I'm forgetting his name. What's his name, Jake?
Uh, I know
The
his
big
first
bat.
name is Leo. I don't know how to pronounce his last
Leo,
name.
okay, we won't mess up his we won't mess up his last name. But point being, like, this is potentially the future, and you're giving him away for a closer who's having a good season this year. Closers in baseball, they sort of translate a lot. They don't always have good seasons. So this is a bank all on this year, where you're only about I think they're like 10 games over 500 right now, like 60 and 50 or something like that. So that's a big gamble. I think that works out very well for the A's. As they try to build up and move to Las Vegas. So I think the Padres made a big mistake. But on the other end, I think there are some teams like Cleveland was having a fire sale a little bit. They were rumored to trade Stephen Kwan. I don't That did not happen, but they did trade Shane Bieber. They did trade there was another pitcher they trade. What's his name? The reliever. Sewell. What's it? Yeah, Sewell, the
Oh,
reliever.
hmm.
Yeah, Paul Sewell. And so they're having a bit of a fire sale. And the one that everybody's talking about is the Twins. Carlos Correa going back to the Astros. They traded a pitcher of the Tigers. They traded Johan Duran, their big closer, to the Phillies. So
Can
when
I
you're
just
sitting around
say,
500,
Johan Duran's entrance into the Phillies game last night, it was electric. I don't know if you guys have seen
oh, that
that,
was
but like,
lit. Yeah.
if you haven't, go check it out.
Shout out
It's
to shout out to the Phillies fans. I understand why players want to go play on teams like that. I mean, that's exciting.
yeah,
Um,
that was something.
yeah, we
But
have some other
anyway,
things that
I'm sorry, what were you saying, Evan?
I was just going to say really quick. We have some things to say about like Phillies fans and Yankees fans and stuff like that. But those guys put out, and how trashy they can be sometimes, but
Yeah,
at the park. But those guys put out a great environment. I think that is overall good for the sport. But as you were saying, Jake.
yeah. I was gonna say I wanted to switch gears kind of and talk about a team that made no trades yesterday. Let's talk about the Atlanta Braves for a minute. Obviously they go into play tonight losing being down 2-0 in the series against being tied in the series against the Cincinnati Reds. Obviously today, the game in Bristol, Tennessee, being the rubber match between the two. Spencer Strider going for the Braves and Chase Burns going for the Reds. But I mean, Braves, they made no trades at the deadline yesterday. They made no attempts to get better. You know, does the Braves front office just see this as a lost season?
I think so. I think when you have a player like Ronald Acuna, you have to keep that into consideration. If they did not have a Ronald Acuna, you probably see the Braves do like a rebuild or a retool too. I think they would have traded Chris Sale if he was healthy because he's a 36-year-old pitcher. He's not going to be great forever. You could have got something for that, but other than that, their bats aren't doing well. They really didn't have a lot of pieces to trade. So I think it sort of makes sense. Now, hopefully they spend in the offseason, but when you have an MVP like player with Acuna, you can't just give up. But I want to give Timmy a chance. Timmy, well, I guess what were your big takeaways for the trade deadline so far?
As a Yankees fan, it was well at the time it was phenomenal. We got Calabrero while we were playing against them. And then we beefed up our bullpen. We got Bednar and Doval, who are both could potentially close, to add to Weaver and Williams, who are both closer level balance. And then we got Jake Bird from the Rockies, I'm not sure on him. Austin Slater from the White Sox, he'll be a good death piece from what I've heard. Um, the big trade deadline move for us was Ryan McMahon, and that one has me excited. So far, we've had him for about a week now, but since we've got him, he's shown a lot of promise for us. So it's as a Yankees fan, I personally thought it was a great deadline for us. But there are some trades. The Marlins wanted Spencer Jones, who's one of our top prospects, for Sandy Alcantara. Um, I'm surprised that Joe Ryan didn't get traded yesterday. That was my big surprise, to be honest. Well, there for a second, I thought he was traded because MLB on Fox posted it, and I believed it, and then they deleted it. The Red Sox had a horrible trade deadline. Like, no offense to Dusty May or anything, but they could have gotten so much better, and they didn't. Um, and that's all I have.
I think with the Yankees, like you and I give credit to the Yankees for being stingy with their prospects. We were just talking about how the Padres trade everybody. I remember back in the day when the Sox were doing their rebuild, Labor Torres was ranked really high, and the Sox I wanted him, and the Sox wanted him, and the Yankees were always very stingy with every package, and they're still like that, and that makes sense because they could have maybe got Sandy Alcantara. I just think the Yankees are
Yeah.
another team where like they are Aaron Judge. Like Aaron Judge is the sole leader of that team, and if he's out and injured, I think Austin Slater's good depth. I think getting Burns and Ryan McMahon, especially the bat from Colorado, I think those are good moves. But right now the Yankees are again they're a little over 500, hovering around there. If they're going to get back to the World Series like last year, they need Judge healthy, and then maybe these pieces matter. But without a healthy Judge, I don't think much of these pieces matter. But I guess just my last takeaway about the trade deadline, um, you know, I think it was highlighted by the early moves. I think Rafael Devers was probably the biggest move. Nobody really saw that coming going to the Giants. I think that's what really kicked it off. Um, but yeah, I think this was a lot of you saw the Dodgers relatively stay pat. You saw the Cubs stay pat. You saw the Brewers stay pat. All the teams that are way up there. The Tigers made a couple pitching moves, bullpen moves, but let's be real, they didn't really do much. This is again the most wide open year of baseball I've seen in a while, and the trade deadline, I don't know, sort of makes me still feel like it's like that way.
Yeah, I mean the Cubs kind of just stayed pat, because I remember I know that the Marlins were talking to the Chicago Cubs about potentially trading away Sandy Alcantara, but the Marlins wanted two top five prospects in the Cubs system, and they said no. They wanted outfielder Owen Casey, and right-handed pitcher Jackson Wiggins, and the Cubs said no. So, the Marlins just decided to stay pat with Sandy Alcantara, keep him in Miami, and not make a trade. But you know, going into, talking about the Chicago Cubs, they're in a tight NL Central race with the Milwaukee Brewers. I believe they're tied right now, or the Brewers might be ahead, but they're both playing actually really good baseball. And the Cubs play the Orioles today. Game two, I believe, at 2:20. So we'll see how that goes. But I think when it's all said and done, I think the Cubs win this division because they got guys like Pete Armstrong, Colin Ray on the mound. He's pitching good. Matthew Boyd is pitching good. They got big bats. Gansby Swanson hasn't really produced in a while, but I feel like when his bat gets back up, he'll start producing. And with the Brewers, obviously that flamethrower Jacob Mizrachi, they got Brendan Woodruff back. Just acquired Andrew Vaughn from the Chicago White Sox, which that deal has turned out to be really good for the Milwaukee Brewers. They still got Jackson Chilio, obviously Christian Yelich, AL MVP a couple years ago. He's obviously a big piece of this team going forward. But Evan, what do you think is going down the stretch, with the Brewers and the Cubs?
I just think it will be a very good matchup. And like I said, I was surprised that both of them relatively stood pat. Other than like you said, the Andrew Bud trade that happened. That's working out. We'll see how long he continues to be good. But he's hitting a lot of home runs right now, and in timely moments. Like he's like it's like late ninth inning, eighth inning, seventh inning. He's hitting these home runs. So no, it's going to be a good race through the end. But all right, we will switch gears to the next topic. And the next thing that we're talking about is Cal Raleigh's amazing season. Because honestly, I was not really like I didn't really know how good this guy was doing until the home run derby. I'm like, wait, this guy has what 38 home runs already? All right, that's not 28, 38. That's not an error. And like, you know, and just to read off some, some stats he's done 20 homers before May 31st. A catcher's never done that before. 30 home runs before the All-Star break. A catcher's never done that before. Most home runs before the All-Star break by a Mariner. You got to keep in mind Ken Griffey Jr. played for that team. And most stolen bases. That's sort of interesting too, because you don't think of catchers as fast, but most stolen bases by a Mariners catcher in a single season, and we still have 2 more months to go. So he's all around a good player. He won the home run derby. He has a 5 wins above replacement average right now. That'll probably only grow. Yes, he is using the torpedo bat right now, but so are a lot of other players. And I just think I think he's having a huge season. I don't know, like, people are saying, is he changing the game? Is this special? Like, I think this is just where baseball's sort of going. These giant power hitters, like we haven't seen since the steroid era, like, with Mark McGuire, all those guys, when they were juiced up, but like, and then we sort of went away. Like, if you look at the home run leaders, like in the 2010s or the late 2000s, like most of them were only hitting like 40 home runs. And now we've got, Stanton had like a 59 home run season. Judge has had multiple way up there. Matt Olson had a 50 something home run season. And now Cal Raleigh looks like he's going to be way up there too. Last I checked was 41, but that was a few days ago. He might have hit another one, but
He's at
Yeah,
42
he
now.
did.
42 home runs now. Yep.
Yeah, I
So
know.
yeah,
He
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, he passed a Swiss hitting Caxo for the most home runs at this point in the year. Or in a season, I'm sorry, but obviously he's still trailing Salvador Perez for the most home runs in a season. I believe Salvi hit 48.
He hit 48
Correct
in
me if I'm wrong.
2021. Yep. Yep. So, but he's gonna get that. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah,
But
Cal Raleigh's on pace to beat that.
that's the thing. I'm just saying, like, I think this is an amazing season for Cal Raleigh. I think he's gonna. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
he just got extended this offseason, but I think if he keeps this up, he's gonna cash in even more. This is great for
Oh
his
yeah.
history, but I think another catcher will do this in 5 years from now. I think that's just how they make catchers now. But Timmy, I guess what do you think?
I have breaking news real quick. It's not
Okay,
baseball, but it's basketball. Luka Doncic and the Lakers have agreed to a three-year,
it just popped up on my
$165
phone
million
too.
max extension.
Yep.
Um, but
Breaking
on the
news on
Cal Raleigh,
Pwtb. Here we go. Yep.
Yeah. I get
uh,
this from PWTV. PWTV was first on it.
um, but on the Cal Raleigh front, as much as I hate it because he's probably going to cost Aaron Judge an MVP this year, that was Aaron Judge's injury. Bro's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, his to be a catcher and doing what he's doing, Mariners record for stolen bases by catcher already. Um, Leading the league in home runs at 42. Uh, and the fact that he's doing what he's doing on the Mariners, who are no offense to Mariners fans, they're usually a nobody team. Um, I'm very impressed. It's just you don't get that talent a lot, especially from a catcher. So it's very, word, need a good word here. It's some, I'm sure there's kids now that are looking up to Cal Riley, especially those who enjoy playing the catcher position. I personally never liked it. I didn't like wearing all that gear, but
You
it's
played
very
catcher,
big
Timmy,
for.
a little bit.
I hated it. I played like 2 games in it. Uh,
I hate it too. I only play like one game as tech, so I hate it too. I
Your
can't.
knees got to be like done by the time you're 35. Like it's
especially
like,
like
yeah.
Dude,
in the
my knees were
summer when you're
killing me
wearing
when
all
I
that.
got out, man.
In the summer when you're wearing all that gear,
Oh,
it
that too.
sucks. All
Yeah.
that black gear on you, and it's just.
100,
But
100 degrees, you got to catch pitches every 30 seconds. Like you're just sweat
Yeah.
pouring down. I can't imagine. I didn't play baseball personally, but I always thought that. I'm like, geez, these guys like knees got, but I didn't even think about the heat thing too. Like that's crazy. But Jake, how big of a deal do you think this season is for Cal Raleigh?
I mean, I agree with Timmy. You know what Cal Raleigh doing at Caxo this season is historic, and especially doing it at Caxo, is awesome. Um, I think, obviously we are talking a little earlier about Cal Raleigh beating Salvador Perez for the most home runs by catcher in single season history, and I think Cal Raleigh easily catches, Salvador Perez, even passes Salvador Perez. Yeah, it's phenomenal what Cal Raleigh is doing this year.
Yeah, I think right now, so this leads to the last question is how many homers do we actually think he's going to hit? Right now, he's on pace for 64 home runs. It might have moved since I just learned he got to 42. Maybe it's like 64, 65 right now, probably about the same, which would be amazing. I think Judge a couple years ago hit 62. So I think that'd be a big deal if he can beat that, because that'd be like the most, in the last like non-steroid era that we've seen, like Sammy Sosa and all them. Barry
Yeah,
Bonds hit above that, but
yeah.
yeah, but like I think that would be the big deal. So if he can keep pace, I hope he can. I could personally see him tiring out a little bit, but he's only 18 away from 60. I think we all got to root for him to get there. But you know what? Yeah, I'll say I think my prediction is I think he'll at least get 60. He might only get 60, but if he does beat out Judge from I believe 2022 at 62, that'd be a pretty big deal. So how many do you guys see him get?
I think he'll tire out a little bit, but obviously still hit those homers. I think he'll finish a little shy of 60. I think he'll actually finish with 59.
Think he'll tire out. Timmy, what do you think?
I also think he'll tire out because he's a bigger guy, and I'm gonna say anywhere from 57 to 63 in that range. So I'm not giving a specific number because I'm bad at that. 63 maximum and no less than 57.
So
And
you
we
think
say
there's a chance he beats out Aaron Judge?
Unfortunately, yeah, I can see it, but is it likely? Probably not, but still very possible given that he only needs 20 something home runs.
Yeah, and we say tire out like even if he only did finish with 57, which is still amazing, like that would be because he's at 42, that'd still be like 7 or 8 home runs a month. So I mean that just goes to show the crazy pace he's on currently. But all right, so we will switch gears next up. I believe Jake has a little more to uh start on with this is the Tyreek Skubal versus Garrett Crochet tight American League Cy Young race right now. They're very close in ERA, but yeah, what's going on there, Jake?
Yeah, they're very close in ERA. They're very close in strikeouts. They're very close to, I know it doesn't really matter, but team wins. Every time they kick the mound, their team ends up winning because they pick so good. I know, like I say, it really doesn't matter. No, what really matters is their ERA and their strikeout numbers, their whip and their numbers, but this race is very tight. It's going to go down to the end. I think in the end, I think Taylor Struble wins it over Garrett Crochet, but I'm not positive on that. Evan, what do you think?
I think we don't know right now. I remember, especially on this podcast, we were talking how Spencer Strider in 2023 was a lock. You guys remember we had that big campaign, and he had an amazing season. But little did we see Blake Snell was coming up with an amazing
Right.
ERA. Spencer Strider was the strikeout guy, obviously, but But I think it's too early. They're just dead close. Jake said that they're pretty much equal in wins above replacement, ERA, wins. I didn't even know that. Strikeouts, I think Crochet has 175, Scuba has 171. Like they are they are right there. I think if you asked me when I'm watching who is the more dominant pitcher, probably Scooble by a smidge. Just because of how, especially earlier in the season, how dominant he is. But then you see Garrett Crochet striking out the side, putting up 11 strikeout games on the regular. So, um, it's gonna. I think the true answer is we don't know right now. But if you were to ask me, I would. I think Scooble is by a smidge. Not that Crochet's worse, but just Scooble is just on a different level. And everyone who's seen him this year so far has said that. But and they had a little bit of a cold streak in July too, so you got to keep in mind that with his numbers. But
Yeah.
so yeah,
And Struble pitches today against the Philadelphia Phillies, so we'll see how that shapes out.
yeah, Timmy, what do you think?
If you'd have asked me like just before the All-Star break, I would have said Scuba has it locked. Like he pulled away. But as a Vols fan, I hate saying this because I hate the Red Sox. Uh, Garrett Crochet, he's been one of my favorite pitchers since he's been drafted. But he's having a phenomenal season with the Red Sox, and I can see him pulling out and stealing this thing. Like you mentioned, the Strider and Blake Snell. I think I think Scuball has a slight edge over him. It's nowhere near what it was, but if we continue on this pace, it'll be Crochet. Um, but right now, it's still Scuball by just a little bit.
Important point. I think we got to realize how they decide these awards too. I think ERA is a huge thing. I think Strider was, I think he had around 3 ERA that season, and noticeably Blake Snell was lower. I think he was closer to 2. So that's why they gave Strider had all the strikeouts. Chris Sale back in the day with the White Sox, he would have 300 strikeouts and not get it. I think whoever has the lower, and we don't know, it could be Crochet, it could be Scooble. But I think whoever has, like, if one has a 2 ERA and one has a 2.5, I don't think it matters how much the guy with 2.5 has. I think they're going to give it to the guy with the lower ERA. I think that's just how in the past they've given this award. So I think they'll probably keep doing it that way.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think it depends on obviously independent stats as well. But I think also the team's winning because, like you mentioned, Evan, that's how they get it in past years. And obviously we talk about AL Cy Young, but also we're going to talk about NL Cy Young with Paul Steens. That shouldn't be the case. Paul Steens is just dominant enough. It shouldn't really matter how the Pirates are playing this year because we all know. I mean, the Pirates are not doing good this year. That's just about it. But it shouldn't matter how the team is doing. It should matter how the player is doing. And
Yeah,
I've always said.
I don't think really quick. I don't think they care too much about that. It's just it would be like if Paul Skeens was at the end of the year, he had under a 2 ERA, like I think he does now. There's no way you could not give it to him. But if Jake is making a good point, if it's close, if it's like he has slightly better stats than one, but the other guys on the Dodgers, like I don't know, say it's Glasnow or Kershaw or whoever, like then they might give it to him. So it just depends on how that goes.
Yeah, Evan, I know we were talking about this a couple weeks ago. We were talking about the lowest ERAs in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, Jake quizzed
Jacob
me. It took me
DeGrom,
like 20 minutes to get this, but I did get it, to be fair. Yeah.
Jacob DeGrom has actually moved out of the top five to make
Old
room
man
for
DeGrom.
Matthew Boyd.
Matthew Boyd, that's solid for him. Yeah, old man DeGrom, I guess, took a step back, but that's to be
Yeah,
expected.
obviously, Parsons is still at number one. His ERA at 1.83, which I just think is ridiculous.
It got
Um,
lower. It was 1.9 when I last saw. Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was. Yeah, he's 45 career starts, he has a 1.89 ERA, which is just insane.
Yeah. That's crazy. But all right, moving on. We will next talk about Bryce Harper and Rob Manfred. Obviously, Rob Manfred. A lot of people don't like him, and I get it. He's the commissioner, he's the figurehead. I think he's making a lot of good changes for baseball that needed to be changed without changing the entirety of the game. I sort of think NBA changed their whole model and it hurt them in a bad way. I think, and I'm a huge NFL fan still. I think the NFL has changed a lot from when I first watched it. But baseball has made changes. They had the runner on second, the pitch clock. They're working on challenging strikes and balls. A lot of stuff to make it more hitter friendly too, like the balls and stuff like that. A lot of stuff to make it more appealing to fans, and I think it's worked. And I feel like, again, I've been watching baseball since 2012, and I don't think it's really changed a lot since I first watched it. So credit to Rob Manfred on that. I know he's done some questionable stuff, and
Yeah.
this is a controversial thing because you're talking about not paying players much with the salary cap. So I heard so just some meetings details about that meeting before I throw it around. Um, you know, uh, Rob Manfred, he didn't even really mention the salary cap. He was just mentioning the bargaining agreement that expires December 1st, 2026. He was expiring or talking about it with the Phillies clubhouse, seeing how they feel. At one point, Bryce Harper decided, he's sort of in the back, not really looking like he's paying attention. And then he um, storms to Manfred and tells him to shut the, what up. And Manfred, I guess, to stand his ground is like, try to act tough or whatever. I don't know. Says I'm not going to, and then, or maybe he wasn't, or maybe he was just trying to move on with the conversation. But I thought that was funny from the commissioner being like, I'm not going to shut that up. You can leave if you want, but or no, he didn't tell him that. He told him to get out of the clubhouse. But same sort of feeling, same sort of vibe.
Kind of
Um,
like how Gary Jago told Joe Buck in the All-Star game.
yeah, yeah. Some players, yeah, especially the stars, especially if they feel like they're being wrong, they'll stick up for their former teammates. But
Yeah.
this is this worth sticking up for? I don't know. I think a salary cap, we've talked about this on the show a lot, in past years and even recent episodes, that I think a salary cap is good. But I guess whose side do you come down on this?
Yeah, I think a salary cap needs to be implemented so you don't see teams, obviously build a super team like the LA Dodgers are doing right now. Even the LA Dodgers, even the New York Yankees last night, I saw that their payroll is at like $297 million. That's just ridiculous. Even though not nearly as much as the Dodgers at 1 billion, I think. Signing Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, and Yoshinori Yamamoto. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think it's so much higher than the Yankees. I think there needs to be a salary cap so this doesn't happen again. So teams get a fair, playing field.
Yeah, Timmy, what do you think?
You know, I think it should be a lot because the MLB is big on their international players, so I think it should be a lot looser of a salary cap than NFL or NBA. But I think a salary cap because you have all these teams in big markets, Yankees, Dodgers, the other team in New York, um, that are just spending an outrageous amount of money to build super teams. And it's not fair for these teams in small markets like the A's for now, the Rockies, even the Marlins. These small markets are suffering because everybody wants to flood to these big name teams with all the money.
Yeah, I think the small markets are. So I agree with both of you. I think there should be a salary cap, and I'll explain that in a little more depth. But like, this some of the and to be fair to the other side of the argument, some of the small market teams are suffering because their owners suck. I'm looking at Colorado. I'm looking at Pittsburgh. I'm looking at like the Reds. Sometimes the White Sox. Um, but um, but
Say that with my
I would say that like when you talk about a salary cap, you're just talking about like the minimum basis. You're just talking about like we're not going to control how every team, like big market teams will still be the ones dishing out the money. You see that in the NFL. Mahomes is still getting 500 million. The Cowboys are still spending like crazy. Like again, we've talked about this in past episodes, so I don't want to go crazy on that, but that's why. And I think Bryce Harper again, he wants to stand up for players, but he doesn't have the appropriate talking points yet. He doesn't know how to stand up for players in his mind. So he just decides to lash out. And again, I'm not saying I love everything Manfred has done, but I think he's changed, adapting appropriately to change. So I got to side with him on this. And, Harper doesn't have the appropriate talking points because he knows deep down, or he will find out eventually if he doesn't know, that a salary cap is good for the sport. I think it's better healthy for the sport. Again, like we just said, some owners do suck. But at the same time, uh, you know, it's important. I think some teams would spend more if there was more of a level playing field, but no team, is ever going to be able to pay Judge or Otani as much money as they want to be competitive. And especially with the Dodgers just winning last year, we'll see. We'll see if it's just big market teams throughout. It hadn't been that way, but it seems like the Dodgers almost bought their way last year. So I don't know. Hopefully it doesn't go that way, but yeah, it's going to get real interesting starting next year, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I know. So that was the last thing we had planned, but I wanted to bring up something else because I thought it was very interesting. Yesterday the DC Council had voted 9-3 in favor of returning the Commanders to the old stadium in Washington D.C. Is this a step in the right direction to maybe getting the Washington Redskins back as their team name, or is this like something that they're just trying to get more fans into the stadium?
I think it's just an appropriate change. I think people have, made their voices loud and clear for a number of years on FedEx Field. I know they just named it something else, but I'll still call it FedEx because I don't know exactly what it's called now. But like that stadium has been around for almost 30 years and people have complained about it for almost all of the 30 years. Now, I know with the name switch and all that, Trump was saying he wants them to switch back to the Redskins. We'll see what goes on with that. But in terms of the Commanders, recently just selling to new ownership, a bunch of shared group with Magic Johnson and all of them. They're trying to make stuff happen. They've got a competitive team now after drafting Jaden Daniels. Next step is getting out of the stadium. That's usually the butt of the jokes for most NFL teams. So I think
Yeah.
it's good that they did that. I think it's good they put their money where their mouth is. That DC just doesn't really that it shows that at least some elected officials in DC care about I almost said the Redskins care about the Commanders and them wanting to be a part of the actual city instead of just being some side piece in Virginia. So I think that's pretty cool.
Well, we talk. I mean, we talk about the Commanders going back to the Washington Redskins, the Washington Commanders going back to the Redskins, and we talk about the only reason that the name was changed in the first place because of Dan Snyder. Well, Dan Snyder doesn't own the team anymore, so maybe maybe it's something that this new ownership can look into. Maybe so. We'll see what happens with that. But um,
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know. I guess since we're on the Commanders, I'm curious about this. Are they going to continue from what they built last year? I'm hearing, Jaden Daniels is a top 5 quarterback. Like that's gonna be interesting too. But altogether, it's good vibes for yeah, DC and a time and especially with the Commanders, Washington, there has not been a lot of good vibes with them except that year with RG3. So yeah, exciting times for them. Hopefully they get that new stadium built. It's another one of those. I guess last comment on that. It's another one of those like indoor stadiums. If you look at the interior design, it looks like that's the new thing in the NFL now. It looks exactly like the SoFi Stadium. That's what they all look like now. Like the Titans design sort of looks like that. Titans are a little smaller. I think they're only holding 60, but that's the new NFL like that indoor like stadium for concerts and
new
stuff like that too.
blueprint. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, Timmy, I don't know any thoughts on Washington moving back. to DC maybe.
Well, it's a horrible stadium, FedEx Field or whatever. The stadium's horrible. There's always leaks. I mean, a few years ago, the wall over at the tunnel collapsed, and somebody fell onto Jalen Hurts. Outside of that, it's a very dangerous field. I don't know if you've seen, but there's serious injuries. Joe Burrow, Alex Smith, somebody else. A bunch of these serious and deadly injuries, or not deadly, but season-ending injuries, were all happening in the same area of the field.
Oh gosh, yeah, I remember
So,
that Alex Smith injury. But
yeah.
to be fair, again, because that's what we do here, is there actual evidence that like the field was causing that? Have you like read anything on that? To be fair, I guess.
No, but it's a coincidence that they're all in the same area of the field. Uh, so, not Joe Burrow. There's been a ton of big name players that just get hurt in that area of the field, and obviously, it's football. You got to get hurt somewhere. But it's never as bad as that. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does make sense. I went to FedEx Field one time. I went there in 2013. That was one of the NFL stadiums I've gone to. It was like a Sunday night game versus the Giants, and East Coast sports fans they get ruthless. Like Granny behind me was shouting the F bomb. I was like 11, and like they get up in arms. But anyways, the stadium I always thought I like outdoor football. Although some indoor stadiums are good too, but generally I like outdoor football, so that's a plus. I like big stadiums. FedEx Field for a while was the biggest stadium in the NFL. I think they took out some seats, but it's just an ugly looking design. Like I know they're doing the red after like the colors of the Commanders, but like it's just like ugly looking. I don't know what it is about it. Someone else could probably explain it better. It just looks ugly to me, and I never like hated it, but I think they could use a new stadium. It's usually empty too. Like the locals just stop showing up to it. So yeah, overall it's good that these guys are
Oh,
moving. But all right, winding down the show still, we got a little bit more we want to talk about. Um Next up is some Tennessee Titans talk. I know Timmy really wanted to get into this, especially with Traylon Burks being cut and Will Levis out for the year. The Titans of the last couple of years, sort of on the way out. New generation sort of coming in. So I guess, yeah, I'll hand it over to you, Timmy.
so it started a couple weeks ago. Well, it started the day. Well, I'm just kidding. It started really whenever he got hurt against the Dolphins because Will Levis plays reckless, and he got hurt against the Dolphins, and then came back and then got hurt again or re-hurt it or re-aggravated it. I don't know the right word, and he got hurt again. So and he played through it, and that's um he finally decided to have season-ending surgery. What I think is he knew during training camp he was losing the starting job because he was getting first team reps with Cam Ward, and he was losing those reps. So I think he knew he was losing the starting job. So he decided to tap out for this season and get the surgery. And then Burks was having a somewhat amazing training camp when he was, not hurt. Um, and then he gets hurt, and the Titans knew that they weren't going to get anything through trading him. He stays hurt constantly. So I feel like they made the right move by just letting them go. Next year, I could see them doing the same with Levis. Obviously, they can't cut him this year, but I can see them moving on from him next year and just letting them go. Um, I also see a potential release of players who have been here for a little bit, like Arden Key. The only guy who was from the John Robinson era, not John Robinson, Ron Carthon's first year. The only one of those that is completely safe is Peter Skronsky and Tajay Spears. Um, yeah, you mentioned that the Titans, it's going to be a new team as we get rid of people. Uh, yeah, the Titans are going to be a completely different team going into the 2025 season compared to what they were 2024, even 2023.
Yeah, this is
Yeah, I
closing.
agree. I think what were
Jake,
you
actually,
saying?
I'll let you go first because I'll probably, as the Titans fan, as Timmy as the Titans fan, I'll probably have some pretty long thoughts, but so I will let you go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, of course, yeah. The Titans are gonna be a new team this year. Obviously, they got a new leader, a quarterback with Ken Ward, #1 overall from the University of Miami, which is my team, by the way. So I would have something to say about that. He played really good at Miami. He's obviously really He's obviously a really talented quarterback, so he's got high hopes going into Tennessee. I think that I do actually disagree with Timmy on that one point where they might cut Will Levis next year. I think overall, you're going to need a backup quarterback, and whether that be, Will Levis or someone else, you're still going to need a backup quarterback, and you're going to need a backup to back up that quarterback because you never know what's going to happen. So I think the Titans are going to be a brand new team, but as for cutting Traylon Burks, I think that was the right move. He was all like Timmy said, he was always hurt in Tennessee, so I think you kind of just gotta move on from that. You got Xavier Restrepo coming up. He was drafted you know, obviously he was signed as a free agent in the last round. Cam Ward wanted Xavier Restrepo to
Yeah,
come to
we're a safe
Tennessee
haven
since they were.
for your. You better be rooting for us, Jake, with Cam Ward
Oh
and
yeah,
Restrepo. Come on now. Yeah.
I will be. I will be rooting for you guys.
All
I
right, wait a
think
second. Timmy's got to say something because he's repping the. He. I said we're both Titans fans. He's really repping it. Timmy, what kind of flag we got going on over there?
he's got it over his head.
Yeah, I was worried if he could
I
breathe or
bought
not. There
this.
we go.
I bought this thing from Fanatics
Show
a
it.
few
There we
years
go.
ago.
Oh, there we go.
Uh, it came with a shirt. Actually, no, yeah, it came with a shirt and a hat. The hat, I have no idea what I did with it. It's somewhere in this room. Shirt in my dresser. Actually, I considered putting it on for today's episode. Um,
Yeah, if
it
we're
was
gonna.
like $50 for everything, but
Oh, that's not
yeah,
bad.
I
Yeah,
just
I was just gonna say if we're gonna record, if I'm gonna record more here, I gotta get some Titan stuff. I got my hats over there, so maybe we'll do that another time. But honestly, just on the first thing, I'm actually will disagree with Jake and agree with Timmy on that one. I think nothing against Will Levis personally. You do need a backup. Jake is correct with that point. But sometimes you have to close out the era. And Will Levis was a second round pick, so he did not get a 5 year deal. He got a 4 year deal, which means 2026 would be his last year anyway. So sometimes you got a new GM, this is the end with Levis, with Burks. This is that Titans era, the Rand Carthron era, whatever you want to call it. Well, I guess Burks was Robinson technically right at the end, but whatever you want to call it, this was the end of that era going out with a fart. That's what it was. This is, and Will Levis, I'm not he was bad last year. There's a reason we were drafting #1 overall. There's a reason we had the #1 overall pick. He's just not decision making. He's got a strong arm, but it's not like Josh Allen level. He and the decision making is just too poor. I think he could make it in this league, but his days right now of starting are over. He needs to be a backup and learn a little bit. So this is good. It's obviously good that I mean it sucks that he got injured, but like it's good that we're just rolling with Cam Ward right away anyways. I think the Titans should have done that. You could say you give Levis the reps like Cam Ward season in, but to me there's no point of that. But I will say I do feel bad. Levis was posting this thing on his Instagram with his shoulder and like you could see like where it's like pointing like right here and it's just I feel bad for the kid. Absolutely, he should have not been trying to play if that was the case. But I guess that does say something. That does make him a little bit naive, but that does make him, it shows his heart. So I give respect to that. But yeah, he's out for the year, and I do believe he'll probably get cut eventually. I think he's probably played his last game as a Tennessee Titan. And then Traylon Burks again. he might have been doing good in camp. I don't doubt that. He probably could have helped Cam Ward, but we have other receivers that will, play a factor. It would have been nice to have a fourth year one, but I guess we'll rely on Calvin Ridley and all that. But yeah, I mean, like, I just want to
So,
finish up on one point, Timmy. Like this was again, the end of the era is time to go. This guy was laughably traded for AJ Brown. He was put in a tough circumstance and did not live up to standards. So I have nothing against these guys personally, but they failed. And it's time to move to the new era. Wish them all the best. And it's tough that they got injured. Yeah.
Burks wasn't making the roster. We went and completely overhauled the receiving room. Van Jefferson was going to make it over him. Bryce Oliver was going to make it over him. Restrepo was going to make it over him. And, we got our rookies that we drafted, A. Almoner and DK, that were both locks to make the
I'm so
roster.
excited for A. Almoner. I think he's going to be a beast. Yeah.
Dude, after that Travis Hunter game,
Yeah.
it's so good to have him playing against Travis Hunter. Uh, but then you also have our vets, Ridley and Lockett. Lockett and Ridley are both getting up there in age, and they're they're very important for the development of our rookies, and they're still solid receivers. I mean, well, Ridley just had 1,000 years last year, so and Lockett wasn't bad, I don't believe. So yeah, Burks wasn't making the roster anyways because there's 7 guys ahead of him. But
Yeah. I have a very low bar for the Titans this year, but an optimistic one. I just want to see the offense do something. Look like an NFL offense. Don't look like Will Levis, because then this is Callahan's chance. I mean, he's got an offense with some talent. We just need to see some pop plays. We need to see a win that we weren't expecting to see. We need to see a 30-point game we weren't expecting to see. If it's 3 turnovers a game, you can't blame it on Will Levis anymore. So that'd be up to Callahan. Obviously, it's a rookie year for Cam Ward. He's going to have to learn a little bit. But we need to see some offensive improvements this year if I'm a Titans fan. But
I feel like this is the year we ease Ty. We've been easing them for the last 2 years. This is the year Tajay takes over as RB1. He's had some injury problems the first couple years, but at the end of last year, I mean that Bengals game, Tajay Spears was untouchable. So I feel like this is the year that he takes that spot from Pollard. And I love Pollard. He's a great running back, but he's an RB2 on most teams. And I feel like Tajay Spears jumps him this year and shows that potential and the reason that we drafted him.
yeah, Pollard had an amazing year last year, but he's getting older, so I can see that shift happening. But all right, well, we will close out with I guess we can make this a regular almost. Timmy is going to update us on the state of NASCAR right now as it heads later in the season. So Timmy, where are we at currently with everything going on in NASCAR?
So since we last talked, Denny Hamlin won a race, but he was already locked in the playoffs. That just puts him at the top of the playoff standings with 4 wins. Um, Bubba Wallace, who was on that bubble, and it was a very tight race between him and Ryan Priest, locked himself into the playoffs. And with that, it puts up. Hold on, sorry, there's something burning in my throat. It puts up a bigger gap for those other three because there's like 4 or 5 races left. Only or 3 drivers left unlocked into the playoffs. So the race is getting tighter, you could say, but they're not tighter. Yeah, Bubba Wallace is in, and he was on the bubble, right on the edge. So we'll have to look and see. Well, they're racing at Iowa this weekend, which is it's only second year on the Cup schedule, so nobody knows how that's going to turn out. You could potentially see this weekend and next weekend new drivers lock themselves into the playoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess what would you say is the big? So you said there's a few races left. What would you say? You said the one Iowa this weekend. Is that the one you're really looking out for, or like what coming up? I guess what race coming up are you really looking out for? What will make a difference?
Daytona part race. You know, last place in points, Harrison Burton went and won it. Somebody's calling me, but I'm not going to answer it. So if that rings, I'm sorry. Uh, Harrison Burton was and won a Daytona to catch himself in the playoffs. Justin Haley won a Daytona a few years ago as an Xfinity Series full-time driver, getting points for the Xfinity Series. That race will it's always to be determined who wins. And you also got Watkins Glen where there's so many drivers who are just good on road courses, they could win that. Iowa's a new track and it's a short track, so there's drivers with that specialty. So those three are the ones that you're most likely going to see a new winner in.
All right. Well, I think that's going to close it out for us on this show. I just want to say be sure to check out the Instagram. I think it's PWTB2 now. I always forget the username, but pretty easy to
Yeah.
find if you search in PWTB. We try to post content from here on there, and other stuff just related to PWTB sports and stuff we enjoy. So be able to check that out if you want more PWTB. But yeah, anything before I go, guys?
Evan, we gotta learn more about NASCAR so we can keep up with Timmy on this. We
Well,
gotta be
Timmy
like
just gives
Ricky
us gives
Bobby.
us yeah, he gives us the update. Yeah, I would love to. I guess that's the Southern stereotype, Timmy, but no, NASCAR is awesome. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, driving around. I like no, I like cars driving around that track, man.
Well,
Cars driving around on a track. Yep.
Yeah,
I grew up 2 miles from Bristol Motor Speedway where the Braves and Reds are playing tonight. So for 21 years, I have never missed a single event at that track. So
No, that
that's
may if I grew up two
it's,
miles from a track, I'd probably be a ginormous NASCAR fan too, I would
it's
imagine.
oh
been
yeah,
it's my childhood.
definitely.
So I've been to everything at that racetrack. So it's my childhood. So that's really why I'm such a NASCAR fanatic, you
Yeah,
could
and
say.
I'll just say I can't wait till football comes back. There'll be so much topics we'll have to talk about with that. It's
Yeah.
sort of that dead zone right now for sports time, but obviously we love baseball, but that's all that's going on right now. So we're gonna have some more sports talk for you guys coming up pretty soon. But with that said, good episode, guys. We will see you next time. All right.
All right, see you guys.